Hey everybody, today we're talking about Superman New Krypton. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Since it's the summer of Superman, we're doing some more Superman stories. Today we're talking about Superman New Krypton. This is the story arc spinning out of Superman Brainiac by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, where at the end of the Brainiac storyline, the bottled city of Kandor arose just as Jonathan Kent was dying and formed a new civilization. Now, this Kandor doesn't really look like what we saw in the book, but, anyway, that's the idea. So, basically, there was back in 2008, 2009-ish, there was that, the Jeff Johns story happened with Brainiac, and it's in this trade paperback. I covered how to read Jeff Johns' Superman in a different video. You can go check it out. But basically, Krypton arose, and then Superman had to deal with it. So you spent it must have been at least a year, or a couple of months, really, dealing with Superman and the new Kryptonians and how they affected Earth. And then Superman went away and lived on Krypton for a whole year before eventually it came back to Earth as a conflict. So I was at the library and found the old hardcovers of The Last Stand of New Krypton, which is almost the end of this saga. And I was like, oh, let me get those. I'll check those out. I haven't read those in a long time and don't have them digitally or anything like that. And since it's Summer of Superman, like hell, let's read them. And then I was like, wait, I need to read the stuff that leads up to this, all the New Krypton stuff. So we talked about the Superman New Krypton storyline and things like that. And so I went on my iPad since I just discovered that Hoopla is a thing, right? And Hoopla has New Krypton, Volume 1 through 4. So I got those issues on my iPad here, and I read those storylines for there. So basically, we're going to review the whole storyline, at least those 4 volumes, in one video, and then we'll do Last Stand of New Krypton in another video, and then the finale, which is War of the Supermen, in a third video. So that's how we're going to discuss this saga. New Krypton Volume 1 is, a combination of different issues. It's got the New Krypton special, as well as issues of Superman and Action Comics, things like that. It's written by James Robinson and Sterling Gates. Greg Rucka comes in to do the New Krypton stuff a little bit later, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. It also it starts off a little wonky with this Action Comics or Adventure Comics special with Codename Assassin and Jimmy Olsen. That's a little weird because it's like, I want to read New Krypton, but I don't want to read about Jimmy Olsen and this weird mystery, which ultimately kind of goes nowhere. So it's kind of wonky. Like in the New Krypton 4-volume pack we're discussing here, 1 through 4, that's the only time you meet this Codename Assassin or the Guardian or anything else. There's a page in New Krypton Volume 2 where they talk about the world against Superman or something like that. It was a smaller crossover within this larger crossover during the World of New Krypton thing, where maybe it was Codename Assassin, something like that. Anyway, that little condensed crossover, I think it was like 3 or 4 issues, which aren't collected in this 4-volume set, saw Superman go back to Earth and confront these guys and found out General Lane is scheming things against Krypton, and then he goes back to Krypton. We get like a 1-page explainer in Volume 3. But overall, I feel like these stories are fun, honestly. Reading Brainiac, that's the exciting thing that happens at the end of that storyline. You're like, where does Superman go from here? And the fun thing about what they did here on this New Krypton saga is that, let me skip ahead here in my iPad. They took all the different versions of Krypton from all the continuities from John Byrne, which I haven't read any of that stuff yet, but that's the one that you see in like Superman and the Nail, where they have like a ruffle on the side of their black uniform, things like that. They took the Silver Age interpretation and added a new interpretation of Krypton that was more modern, and they combined all those and basically said that all of these ways of looking at Kryptonians through the years were different guilds within New Krypton. So, like the classical Silver Age look is the Artist Guild, the Byrne look is the Science Guild, things like that. So I thought that was really neat that they did that and combined all these different histories of Krypton. I'm trying to find a dang page. This Superman or Jimmy Olsen special, and the other one is just so long. I think they're like 40 pages each. So this volume 1 of Krypton takes forever to get into because you are just dealing with this Jimmy Olsen thing that ultimately in this 4-volume set goes nowhere, which is really disappointing. Pete Woods does a lot of heavy lifting here, so if you loved his art in Up and Away, you're going to love this new Krypton stuff. He does a lot of issues in like the first 2 volumes where they're kind of crossing over between the Superman titles, and then he does about half of the volume of the issues of the Superman New Krypton, the 12-issue maxi series that kind of closes out volumes 3 and 4. So if you like Pete Woods, you're in for a treat because I think he does a pretty good job here. Anyway, so you have this initial conflict. There you go. Here's all these Kryptonians. So this is kind of a classical, Silver Age costume, this blonde guy here. I don't know if you can see that. And then down here you've got the John Byrne, Kryptonian look with the ruffles and the robe and the black suit, right? So it's kind of fun because you have Superman dealing with it, coming to remind himself that his culture from Krypton, his inherited culture, and the U.S. American, earthly culture are 2 totally different things. And he's grappling with the uncertainty and unfairness of Kryptonian culture. So you have the Artist Guild, the Science Guild, the Military Guild, which are the main 3, and then there's a 4th one called the Labor Guild. In the Labor Guild, all of these guilds, at least the first 3, have a seat on this council, right? Or 2 seats. And then the Labor Guild doesn't have anything at all. They just do what they told. So they're kind of de facto slaves, I guess. So the first part of that new Krypton storyline, once Superman goes to live there, is him dealing with that fact and wrestling with that fairness is not a concept on Krypton. It's do what you're told and stick within your lines and just follow the rules of regimented order all the way through. It's very, very interesting. But I would say, I think they're all fun, honestly. I think, I think the first 2 volumes of this new Krypton saga are the most fun because it's Superman dealing with the Kryptonians and dealing with the world and trying to figure everything out. But, ultimately he does decide to go live on Krypton, and that's kind of where it gets a little bit more interesting because the last page of volume 2, you have Zod, Ursa, and Non coming back from the Phantom Zone because Allura on Krypton, Kara's mom, Superman's aunt, decides that we should bring everybody out of the Phantom Zone. Since there's so few Kryptonians left, we're going to bring everybody out of the Phantom Zone and we'll give them a reprieve, right? And so the hook for the new Krypton series, which is volumes 3 and 4 of this 4-volume set, is Kal-El, Superman, going to New Krypton to live there for a whole... He's basically like, I'm going to live here. He ends up living there for a year, and they force him to join the Military Guild, which is led by General Zod. So we've recently had Zod come up against Superman in this Last Son storyline with his son Christopher and all this stuff. And then you have Superman basically under the heel of Zod, who actually turns out to be a little less megalomaniacal than you would think. And that's what really sets this story off, because you're like, what is Zod up to? Is he up to anything? Superman certainly seems to think Zod is always up to something, even sometimes when it seems like he's not. We'll find out later on if that is actually true. But there's the new Krypton stuff totally deals only with Kal-El on Krypton. Doesn't deal with Earth at all. So you have him dealing with the Labor Guild politics in the first 6 issues. The second 6 issues have him dealing with a murder mystery where one of the council members gets murdered. And you have this dichotomy of they have very strict laws on Krypton where they'll just kill you, right? Even there's only 100,000 left, they're still going to enact their laws. So you have Kal-El, who's saying, he's calling himself Kal-El on this planet, that's his Kryptonian name. Basically hey, you should not be so harsh, give him a chance, let's find out what the real reasons are as opposed to jumping straight to punishment. So that whole dichotomy of what Krypton is or was coming to, and Superman coming to grips with that and how he's been raised on Earth is a very interesting story hook, and I think it creates a very nice flow throughout these 4 volumes, which ends up being about 24 pages, right? Or 24 issues, sorry. So I think they're fun, honestly. I really think they're fun. The things that aren't collected in these volumes are any issues with Supergirl and the Superwoman of that time, who I think turns out to be a traitor. Anything with Mon-El acting in Superman's stead. He kind of becomes the protector of Metropolis during this era. He comes out of the Phantom Zone and gets a cure for lead. All that stuff is not in any of these volumes. I'm just remembering from what I read back in the day when I was collecting these and from what's mentioned here in these books. And then also rarely mentioned, but you do see them, are Nightwing and Flamebird. I think they took over Action Comics, and that was Greg Rucka's book. And Chris Kent, or the Son of Zod, I think turned out to be Nightwing. I don't remember who turned out to be Flamebird. And that was a whole different thing. That was really confusing because Supergirl had her own storyline maybe 12 months before, or no, it's part of the 1 year later storyline. Her and Supergirl and Power Girl actually went to the bottled city of Kandor somehow and became Nightwing and Flamebird in that bottled city. And it was never really explained how or like why they were there. Maybe it was a dream. But that version of Kandor was totally different from what we see here in the new Krypton saga. So, ultimately, this is a very long-winded video, but I hope it piqued your interest so that you can go and check out your local library, your local library's app, and check out these volumes of New Krypton. I think they're a very fun read. But definitely read the Superman Last Son and Brainiac storylines before you read those. And then just, Jeff Johns steps away because he's doing the Blackest Night stuff at the time. And then Sterling Gates, Greg Rucka, James Robinson take over. And I think they're very good Superman writers in their own right and are crafting a really interesting story, which I think gets even better when you get to the next part of this video series, The Last Stand of New Krypton. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you guys for watching. As always, we'll see you next time in the Funny Pages.